The sun hung like a molten coin in the sky, blistering and unrelenting over the endless dunes of Zerith 9, a forgotten planet where two warring forces had carved their hatred into the sand. The air shimmered with heat, distorting the horizon into liquid waves, and the silence between distant explosions was thick with tension. Dust devils spun lazily across the cracked earth, dancing around shattered war machines and the twisted remains of soldiers, both human and alien, left to bake under the merciless twin stars. Amidst this wasteland stood Lyra, a warrior of the Vaetheri, her pale skin glowing faintly under the harsh light, her long white hair tied back in a tight braid that snaked down her spine like a silver rope. Her armor, forged from living crystal that pulsed softly with inner light, clung to her form like a second skin, scarred and scorched from days of relentless combat. She moved with quiet precision, scanning the ruins of an ancient outpost, her violet eyes sharp, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to snap. The humans had pushed deeper into Vaetheri territory, and though she was outnumbered, Lyra wasn't retreating. She was hunting. And then he appeared, Kalen, a human scout separated from his unit during the last artillery barrage. He stumbled out from behind a collapsed bunker, coughing dust, his dark green fatigues torn at the shoulder, one boot half melted from plasma fire. His face was smudged with grime, but his eyes, bright, reckless, and somehow still full of wonder, locked onto hers. For a moment, neither moved. The wind howled between them, carrying the scent of ozone and scorched metal. Then, without thinking, without fear or protocol, Kalen grinned and said, "You're so gorgeous." Lyra blinked, not because of the words she'd heard flattery before even in the midst of war, but because of the timing, the absurdity of it. Here, in the middle of a battlefield littered with corpses, with enemy patrols possibly closing in, this filthy, half-dead human chose that moment to compliment her appearance. Her cheeks flushed, a rare warmth spreading beneath her alabaster skin. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was something deeper, something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. A flicker of vulnerability she hadn't felt since childhood, before the wars, before the council branded her a weapon instead of a woman. But instinct took over. Discipline crushed emotion. With a swift, practiced motion, she slapped him hard across the face. The sound cracked through the air like a whip. Kalen's head snapped to the side, and he staggered, more from surprise than pain. You hit me," he mumbled, touching his reddened cheek, still grinning like an idiot. "Worth it." Lyra scowled, her voice cold and precise, cutting through the desert wind. "You are either the bravest fool I have ever met, or the most dangerously stupid." "Probably both," he admitted, brushing sand off his pants. "But hey, I wasn't lying. You are gorgeous, even covered in dust and looking like you want to stab me." She rolled her eyes, turning away to scan the dunes again, but not before he caught the faintest curve at the corner of her lips. A ghost of a smile she quickly suppressed. They shouldn't have teamed up. By all logic, by every rule written in military doctrine and interstellar law, they should have fought to the death. The Vaetheri and the Terran Alliance had been at war for nearly a century, locked in a cycle of retaliation and ruin over resources, ideology, and ancient misunderstandings now buried under generations of bloodshed. The humans saw the Vaetheri as cold, emotionless conquerors who drained planets dry. The Vaetheri viewed humans as chaotic, destructive savages who polluted everything they touched. And yet, here they were, Lyra, a decorated warrior sworn to protect her people's honor, and Kalen, a low-ranking scout with no medals and too many jokes, walking side by side across the scorched plains of Zerith 9, surviving only because neither could make it alone. Kalen limped slightly, favoring his left leg where shrapnel had torn through muscle. Lyra noticed but didn't comment. Instead, she adjusted her pace to match his, her steps silent on the sand while his boots crunched loudly with each step. He kept talking, non-stop, relentless chatter about Earth, about music, about his sister's cat that hated everyone except mailmen, about how he once tried to cook ramen in zero gravity and ended up with noodles stuck to the ceiling. Lyra didn't understand half of what he said, but she listened. There was something disarming about his voice, warm and steady despite their situation. "You know," he said after a long stretch of silence, "on my planet, when someone saves your life, you're supposed to buy them a drink, or at least say thanks." "I didn't save you," Lyra corrected. "I merely prevented you from walking into a Vaetheri minefield. Your death would have been messy, and I dislike cleaning up after others." "Still counts," he insisted. "So, drinks when we get back? Assuming we don't die first." She glanced at him, one pale eyebrow arched. You assume I drink alcohol. Oh, come on. He laughed. Every species has something. Fermented space beetle juice, glowing mushroom tea, whatever. You Vathari must have parties. Don't tell me you spend all your time meditating and doing push-ups in 0G. We do not do push-ups, she said flatly. And our rituals are sacred, not frivolous entertainment. Right. He nodded mock seriously. No fun allowed. Got it. She almost smiled again. Almost. They reached the edge of a dried-up riverbed by nightfall, its cracked bed winding like a serpent through the desert. The temperature dropped sharply, the heat of day giving way to a biting chill. Stars blazed overhead, brighter here than on any human world, swirling in vast galactic rivers. Lyra activated a small device on her wrist, projecting a faint holographic map into the air. Their destination, a derelict communications tower, was still 2 days' walk east. It was their best chance to call for help, to signal either side for extraction. But getting there meant crossing the dune maw, a stretch of shifting sands known for swallowing entire squads whole. Kalen plopped down on a rock, groaning. If we survive this, I'm writing a book. How to flirt with an alien warrior and live to regret it. Chapter 1. The slap heard across the galaxy. Lyra ignored him, setting up a perimeter scanner. But when she turned, she found him staring at the stars, his usual smirk gone, replaced by a quiet awe. They're beautiful, he said softly. Back home, light pollution kills the view. Most kids never see the Milky Way. Sad, really. We've got all these worlds, all this universe. And we forget to look up. Lyra sat beside him, not close, but closer than before. On Vathar, we believe the stars are the souls of our ancestors. They watch over us, guide us. He turned to her, eyes reflecting starlight. Do they ever tell you what to do? Only in dreams, she admitted. And even then, their messages are unclear. He chuckled. Mine just tell me to stop saying dumb things to dangerous women. She looked at him then, not as an enemy, not as a liability, but as a person. A flawed, foolish, strangely brave person. And for the first time in years, Lyra felt something shift inside her, like a door creaking open after being sealed for too long. They made camp in the shelter of the riverbank, sharing rations, hers a nutrient-rich gel that smelled like lavender and regret, his a stale protein bar that tasted like cardboard and determination. They took turns keeping watch, though Kalen fell asleep first, slumped against a rock, his breath slow and even. Lyra stayed awake, scanning the darkness, her senses alert, but her gaze kept drifting to him, to the way his fingers twitched in sleep, like he was fighting invisible battles, to the scar above his eyebrow, thin and silvery, to the way he murmured nonsense in his sleep. Tacos, why is the llama angry? Before snoring softly. She didn't understand him, but she couldn't bring herself to leave him behind. At dawn, they pressed on. The dune maw loomed ahead, a valley of shifting sands where the ground itself seemed alive. Strange, wind-carved spires rose like broken teeth, casting long shadows. The air hummed with static, the result of underground energy currents that disrupted electronics and scrambled minds. Legends said the maw was cursed, that it swallowed the greedy, the arrogant, the heartbroken. Halfway through, the ground trembled. Lyra froze, raising a hand. Stop. Now. Too late. The sand beneath Kalen gave way, collapsing into a sinkhole. He yelped, arms flailing, vanishing into the darkness. Lyra lunged, grabbing his wrist just in time. He dangled over a deep chasm, walls lined with jagged crystals that glowed faintly blue. Below, something stirred, a massive serpentine shape coiling in the depths. Don't let go, he shouted, panic edging his voice. I won't, she said through gritted teeth, bracing herself against the crumbling edge. Her muscles burned, but she held firm. With a grunt, she pulled him up, rolling him onto solid ground. He lay there, gasping, covered in sand and shaking. You saved me, he breathed. You're heavy, she replied, wiping sweat from her brow. And you owe me another drink. He laughed, weak but genuine. Deal. They didn't speak much after that. The maw tested them. Sandstorms blinded them, hidden crevices threatened to swallow them whole, and once, a pack of feral dune stalkers, eyeless predators with rows of needle teeth, attacked under cover of dusk. Lyra fought with grace and fury, her crystal blade singing through the air, slicing through chitin and sinew. Kalen, armed only with a plasma pistol and sheer stubbornness, fired wildly, shouting insults at the creatures between shots. Yeah, that's right. Go back to your hole. Your mother was a sandworm. When the last stalker fell, Lyra stared at him, stunned. Did you just insult an alien predator's mother? What? He panted. It worked, didn't it? She shook her head, but there was pride in her eyes. By the third day, they reached the tower, a rusted spire jutting from the sand like a forgotten tombstone. Its systems were dead, its antennas broken. But deep inside, beneath layers of dust and decay, Lyra found a functioning terminal. Her fingers danced across the interface, bypassing security protocols with ease. It can send a signal, she said, but it will take time to charge, and it will broadcast our location to both sides. Kalen leaned against the wall, exhausted. So whoever gets here first wins the prize. 2 idiots who shouldn't be alive. We may not survive the encounter, she warned. My people will see you as a prisoner. Yours may execute me on sight. He looked at her, really looked at her. Would it be so bad if we just disappeared? No signal, no rescue, just us. Find some quiet moon, grow potatoes, annoy local wildlife. She stared at him, stunned. That's the most ridiculous thing you've ever said. And, she said slowly, it's also the most tempting. For a moment, the weight of the galaxy seemed to lift. The war, the duty, the centuries of hatred. It all faded, replaced by the simple truth that they had survived together. That they had laughed, fought, and maybe, just maybe, begun to care. Then the alarms blared. The terminal flashed red. Incoming signatures detected. Multiple vessels approaching. Identity unknown. Kalen cursed. Well, so much for potato farming. Lyra stood tall, her armor reigniting with soft light. We prepare. Together. He nodded, loading his pistol. Just promise me one thing. What? If we get out of this, you'll let me take you to dinner. Real food, not space gel. She hesitated. Then, quietly, only if you stop calling me gorgeous. No promises, he grinned. Outside, the sky darkened. Ships descended like vultures, their engines roaring over the dunes. The war wasn't over. The galaxy wasn't ready for peace. But in that broken tower, with the wind howling through shattered windows and the scent of danger thick in the air, 2 enemies stood side by side. Not as warriors, not as symbols of their people, but as something new, something fragile, something worth fighting for. And somewhere, deep beneath the sands of Zereth 9, the stars watched. And perhaps, just perhaps, they approved. The air inside the derelict tower crackled with tension, thick and electric as the approaching ships carved their paths through the upper atmosphere. Their silhouettes flickered in the dusty sky. 3 vessels descending in tight formation, engines flaring like angry eyes. Lyra stood at the cracked viewport, her white hair lifted by the wind that howled through broken panels, her violet gaze locked on the horizon. Kalen crouched beside her, pistol in hand, fingers smudged with grease from hastily modifying the weapon into a makeshift EMP trigger. They're not broadcasting any identification, Lyra murmured, her voice low but steady. No flags, no signals. That means either pirates or something worse. Something worse being? Kalen asked, cocking an eyebrow. Mercenaries hired by both sides to eliminate survivors. Or worse, Void Reapers. Kalen blinked. Okay, I'll admit I've heard of pirates, but Void Reapers? Sounds like a bad rock band. Lyra didn't smile this time. They're not musicians. They hunt stragglers in war zones. Strip them of tech, memories, organs. Sell what's left. They don't care who wins the war. Only who pays. Kalen whistled. Charming bunch. So, do we wait and fight? Or run before they dig us out like desert truffles? We can't outrun them, she said. Not across open dunes. But we can use the tower. It's old, yes, but it was built as a surveillance outpost. There are tunnels beneath us. Emergency routes. If we move fast, we can vanish before they breach the surface. He grinned, despite the danger. You mean your people actually planned for a retreat? I thought you Vathari were all honor above survival types. She shot him a look. Even honor needs a backup plan. With that, she led him down a rusted spiral staircase into the bowels of the structure. The deeper they went, the colder it became, the walls lined with ancient circuitry pulsing faintly with residual energy. Dust coated everything, and the scent of ozone and decay hung in the stale air. At the lowest level, Behind a door sealed with biometric locks long since corrupted, Lyra placed her palm against the scanner. A soft chime echoed, and with a groan of protesting metal, the door slid open. Beyond lay a network of narrow tunnels, carved from the planet's bedrock. Some collapsed, others stretched into darkness, lit only by the occasional flicker of emergency lights. "This way," she said, stepping forward without hesitation. Kalen followed, his boots echoing. You know, most first dates don't involve underground escape routes and possible organ harvesters. She glanced back. "This isn't a date." "No," he smirked. "We've survived explosions, sandworms, alien monsters, and your slap. We've shared rations, watched stars, and almost died together twice. That's basically marriage in my culture." Lyra didn't answer, but he saw the faintest flush rise in her pale cheeks. Victory. They moved quickly, guided by Lyra's wrist device, which now glowed with a dim map of the subterranean maze. After nearly an hour of tense silence, broken only by distant tremors from the surface, explosions, impacts, the unmistakable sound of plasma fire, they reached a junction. One tunnel sloped upward, likely leading to an old ventilation shaft. The other descended deeper, marked with faded Vathari script. "Forbidden. Containment breach." Kalen peered down the dark stairwell. "That one screams, terrible idea." "It might be our best chance," Lyra said. "The lower levels were used to store experimental technology during the early wars. Some of it could still be functional. Weapons, cloaking devices, even a shuttle if we're lucky." "If we're lucky? Or if we're suicidal?" She turned to him. "Would you rather face mercenaries at the surface with one pistol and a half-charged plasma blade?" He sighed. "Down it is. But if I get eaten by a glowing space eel, I'm haunting you." The descent was treacherous. Rusted grates, missing steps, patches of floor that gave way underfoot. The air grew heavier, thick with static and the hum of dormant machinery. Strange symbols pulsed along the walls, reacting to Lyra's presence. As a high-ranking warrior, her genetic signature still granted her limited access, even after decades of abandonment. Finally, they reached a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. Rows of cylindrical pods lined the room, cracked and leaking viscous fluid. Inside, some shapes floated, twisted, half-formed creatures frozen in time. Genetic experiments. Failed soldiers. Forgotten weapons. Kalen stared, horrified. "Okay, so your people did try to make super soldiers." "I knew it." Lyra's expression darkened. "These were mistakes, born of desperation. The Council buried this program when they realized what we were becoming. Not warriors, but monsters." He looked at her. "And you? Were you one of these?" "No," she said quietly. "I was born free, but trained like one of them. Discipline, obedience, emotion suppressed. Until today, I believed that was strength." He stepped closer. "And now?" Now she hesitated, looked at him. The messy hair, the torn clothes, the stubborn grin that never quite left even when death loomed. "Now I think strength might also be choosing not to fight, choosing to walk away, choosing someone else over duty." He reached out, gently brushing a streak of dust from her cheek. "You're kind of amazing, you know that?" She caught his wrist before he could pull away. Don't what? Don't make me feel things I don't know how to handle." He smiled, soft this time. "Not teasing, not reckless, just honest. Maybe you don't have to handle them. Maybe you just have to let them be." Before she could respond, the ground shook violently. Alarms blared, ancient, distorted, screaming in a language neither fully understood. Red lights flashed. Somewhere above, the surface had been breached. Boots echoed through the tunnels. Voices, harsh, guttural, speaking a mix of trade slang and military code. "They're here," Kalen whispered. Lyra moved fast. She sprinted to a central console, typing rapidly. Panels sparked to life. A hologram flickered, a schematic of the facility. "There's a shuttle, Bay 7, still powered. But the route is blocked. We'll have to go through the core reactor room." "The what room?" "Reactor. It's unstable. Could detonate if disturbed. But if we time it right, the explosion could collapse the tunnels behind us. Cover our escape." Kalen groaned. "Of course. Why take the safe path when we can dance through a nuclear nightmare?" They ran. The reactor chamber was a cathedral of forgotten science. Massive rings of magnetic containment, cracked glass domes housing swirling cores of blue plasma. Energy arced between conduits, lighting the room in pulses of sapphire light. The heat was intense, making the air shimmer. Warning glyphs flashed. Critical instability. Evacuate immediately. Lyra accessed the control panel, fingers flying. I can override the safety protocols. Trigger a controlled search. It'll buy us 5 minutes, maybe less, before the whole level goes. And the shuttle? Autopilot. Prepped for launch. But someone has to fly it. I'll do it, Kalen said instantly. No, she said. You don't know Vathery systems. I'll learn fast. You're better with the tech. You trigger the search. I'll get the ship ready. She hesitated. If you crash it, I won't. And if I do, at least I'll die doing something cool. Now go. She didn't argue. She ran toward the reactor core, initiating the sequence. Kalen bolted for the shuttle bay, heart pounding. The ship was small, a scout-class vessel, sleek and silver, shaped like a dagger. He fumbled with the hatch, finally getting it open, then scrambled inside. Controls glowed in alien script, but luckily the universal interface was intact. He punched in launch commands, rerouting power to engines. The ship hummed to life. Outside, the alarms grew louder. Footsteps pounded closer. Then gunfire. Sharp, brutal bursts echoing through the corridor. Lyra appeared on the monitor, breathless. Surge initiated. Detonation in 4 minutes. Get ready to launch. I'm trying. This thing doesn't have start and go buttons. Switch to manual ignition. Override the navigation lock. Which one is it? The red crystal, Kalen. He slammed his palm onto the glowing stone embedded in the console. The engines roared. The ship lifted. Come on. Come on. Where are you? He muttered, scanning the tunnel entrance. Then she came sprinting, white hair streaming behind her, armor blazing with energy. She leapt into the open hatch just as the first mercenary rounded the corner, rifle raised. Kalen fired the shipside cannon, just once, and the blast vaporized the passage behind her. Close the hatch, she shouted. He hit the button. The doors sealed. The ship shot upward, bursting through a hidden roof panel into the open sky. Behind them, the ground erupted in a pillar of blue flame, swallowing the entire facility in a thunderous implosion. Sand and debris shot into the air like a geyser. For a moment, they hovered, stunned, alive. Then Kalen let out a wild, disbelieving laugh. We did it. We actually did it. Lyra leaned back in her seat, breathing hard. You flew a Vathery shuttle on your first try. Hey, I'm full of surprises. He turned to her. So, where to? She looked out at the endless desert, the burning wreckage of the tower, the sky slowly clearing. We can't go back. Not to my people. Not to yours. Not yet. So we run. For now. Find a neutral zone. Quiet world. Somewhere we can figure out what this is. He didn't ask what this meant. He already knew. He reached over and took her hand. Her fingers were cold, calloused from battle, but they curled around his without resistance. You know, he said, grinning, I still haven't taken you on that dinner. She rolled her eyes, but there was no bite to it. You're impossible. And yet, here you are. The ship soared over the dunes, leaving Zereth 9 behind, 2 fugitives wrapped in silence and something softer. Something neither had words for yet. Love? Maybe. Or the beginning of it. A spark in the dark, fragile but fierce, born not in peace, but in chaos. Days passed in the quiet hum of the cockpit. They drifted through uncharted sectors, avoiding patrols, living off stored rations and stolen supplies from abandoned supply caches. Kalen taught Lyra how to play Earth card games using a salvage deck he found in the shuttle's storage. She beat him every time, claiming it was because humans were predictable. He claimed it was because she cheated with telepathy. She denied it. Mostly. She taught him Vathery meditation techniques, ways to calm the mind, sharpen focus. He lasted 3 minutes before falling asleep. One night, as the ship floated in the shadow of a dead moon, they sat on the observation deck, watching a nebulous swirl in colors no artist could replicate. Do you miss it? He asked. You're home. She nodded slowly. Sometimes. But I also remember the silence. The emptiness. We live long lives, Kalen. Centuries. And most of it is spent following orders. Fighting wars that no one remembers why we started. He sipped from a pouch of rehydrated coffee, his last one. Sounds lonely. It was. She looked at him. Until you slapped me. He choked on his drink. I slapped you? No, You slapped me, in the middle of a battlefield, for complimenting you. You were distracting me, and you were blushing. I was not. You totally were. Your ears turned pink. Well, as pink as white skin can get. She shoved him lightly, but he caught her hand again, holding it between both of his. Lyra, he said, quieter now. Whatever happens next, wherever we end up, I don't want to lose this. Lose you. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. Then don't. And in that moment, floating between stars, with no army chasing them and no war demanding their loyalty, they weren't a human and an alien. Not a soldier and a scout. Not enemies. They were just two people who had found each other in the darkest corners of the universe. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. But the galaxy wasn't done with them yet. Weeks later, while scavenging on a frozen moon near the edge of neutral space, they intercepted a distress signal, weak, fragmented, but unmistakably Vathari in origin. The message repeated on a loop. Survivors, children, imprisoned, Citadel of Ash. Lyra froze when she heard it. Her breath caught. Her hands trembled. That's my sister's voice, she whispered. Kalen looked at her. You have a sister? She was taken years ago, during the purge. I thought she was dead. The screen flickered. An image appeared, blurred, damaged, but clear enough. A group of young Vathari, chained, held in a dark cell. Among them, a girl with white hair and eyes like amethyst. Lyra's knees nearly gave out. Kalen placed a hand on her shoulder. We have to go. She looked at him, fear and fury warring in her gaze. It could be a trap. Probably is. And it's on enemy territory, deep in Alliance-controlled space. Yep. She turned to him. You don't have to come. He smiled, slow and sure. Who else is gonna save you from another slap? Tears welled in her eyes. Tears she had never allowed herself to shed. She pulled him into a hug, fierce and sudden, burying her face in his shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. The ship turned, engines igniting. Their journey wasn't over. The ship cut through the velvet dark of space, its silver hull glinting under the light of a distant nebula shaped like a blooming flower. Inside, the once silent cockpit buzzed with life. Music played softly from a salvaged Earth device. A playlist titled Kalen's Greatest Hits. Mostly just one song on repeat. Lyra stood by the console, her white hair now loosely braided over one shoulder, strands catching the soft glow of the dashboard. Her armor had long been replaced by simpler clothes, a fitted tunic of deep indigo, gifts from a peaceful trading colony they'd helped during their travels. She looked older, not in age. Vathari lived for centuries, but in peace, in warmth, in love earned and held tightly. Beside her, Kalen leaned back in the pilot's seat, barefoot, a half-eaten protein bar in hand. His hair was longer, streaked faintly with gray at the temples. His face lined with laughter more than war. He grinned up at her as she turned, that same reckless spark still dancing in his eyes. You're staring, he said. You're eating again, she replied. But there was no bite to it, only affection. I'm growing boys here, he said, patting his stomach. 5 of them. They need fuel. Lyra rolled her eyes, but the smile broke through. They're not all yours. No, he admitted, standing and wrapping his arms around her from behind. But I raised everyone. Taught them how to fly, how to fight, how to tell when a girl's blushing, even if she won't admit it. She elbowed him gently. You're impossible. And you still married me. She turned in his arms, her violet eyes soft. After we rescued my sister. After we exposed the prison camps. After you stood in front of an entire Vathari council and told them they were wrong. Yes, I married you. Hadn't been easy. Returning to the Citadel of Ash had nearly killed them. The facility was buried beneath layers of deception. Officially, it was a research outpost. Secretly, it housed dozens of Vathari children, captured during the war and used in cruel experiments to understand alien biology. Among them was Lyra's younger sister, Myria, only 12 at the time of her capture. Now a quiet, brilliant girl with a mind like a star map and hands that could rebuild broken machines blindfolded. Kalen and Lyra had infiltrated the base disguised as mercenaries, using stolen codes and sheer audacity. There had been firefights, explosions, a moment where Kalen took a plasma bolt meant for Myria, collapsing in the hallway as Lyra screamed his name. She carried him out, one arm around his waist, her blade cutting down anyone who stood in her way. They escaped just as the reactor core destabilized, the entire complex vanishing in a silent blue explosion against the night sky. Back on neutral ground, Kalen spent weeks recovering. Lyra never left his side, and when he woke one morning to find her sitting by the window, sunlight catching in her hair, holding a small, glowing crystal in her palm, one used in Vathari marriage rituals, he knew. "I don't care about tradition," she said quietly. "I don't care about what our people think. If you'll have me, I want to be yours, in every way." He didn't answer with words. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, slow and deep, like a promise finally kept. Their wedding wasn't grand. No fleets in formation, no banners, no speeches. Just a small gathering on a green moon called Alaris, where the trees sang in the wind and the rivers ran silver. Myria stood beside Lyra, wearing a sash of living vines. Kalen's old squad, those who had survived the war and forgiven his desertion, came in a battered transport ship, bringing music, food, and far too much alcohol. They exchanged vows under a canopy of floating lights, speaking in both Terran and Vathari tongue. When it was over, Kalen lifted her off her feet and spun her, laughing, while the stars blinked above them like approving elders. And then came the children. Not all at once. Not easily. For years they thought they couldn't. Vathari and human biology were vastly different. But science, persistence, and a little help from a reformed geneticist from the Neutral Systems Alliance made the impossible possible. First came twins boys, born under a double eclipse. Their skin a soft cream between human tan and Vathari pale. Their hair snow-white like their mother's, but their eyes warm brown like their father's. They named them Tiran and Dane. Then came Lyra, bold and fearless, with her mother's discipline and her father's humor. She learned to fly a shuttle before she could read. Next, the triplets. 2 girls and a boy, born during a meteor storm, screaming so loud the neighbors thought the base was under attack. They named them Nomi, Sela, and Ren. And finally, the youngest little Marin, a quiet dreamer with violet-tinged eyes and a voice that could calm storms. She was born on the anniversary of their wedding, and Kalen swore the stars themselves sang that night. They built a home on Alaris, a wide compound nestled between hills and forests, powered by solar crystals and laughter. Kalen taught the kids how to cook, with mixed results, how to tell stories, and why you should never insult a space llama. Lyra trained them in combat, meditation, and the ancient ways of her people, but also in kindness, in questioning orders, in choosing peace when possible. Myria became a scientist, designing eco-harmonizing tech that healed war-torn planets. She never married, but adopted 2 orphan children from a destroyed colony, raising them with fierce love. As the years passed, the war between the Vathari and the Terran Alliance began to fade. Not overnight, not without pain, but stories spread, of the warrior who saved enemy children, of the human who defended her people, of the family that proved peace wasn't weakness, but strength. Diplomats came, then ambassadors, then treaties. One day, a formal request arrived. The newly formed Unity Council invited Lyra and Kalen to speak at the Galactic Peace Forum, the first joint address by a Vathari warrior and a Terran veteran. They stood together on the great stage, overlooking a crowd of thousands from 100 species. Kalen spoke first. "We didn't start this peace," he said, grinning. "We just refused to keep fighting. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is put down your weapon and hold someone's hand instead." Lyra stepped forward. "Love does not erase difference. It embraces it. My husband is loud, messy, and says the wrong things at the worst times. But he is also kind, brave, and never stops believing in better. Because of him, I learned to laugh, to hope, to live." The audience rose in applause. Later, back home, the children swarmed them, tugging at clothes, demanding stories, arguing over who got to sit next to Dad at dinner. Kalen sat on the porch, Lyra beside him, her head on his shoulder. The sun dipped below the hills, painting the sky in gold and lavender. "Think we did okay?" he asked. She looked at him, then at their children running through the fields, shouting, laughing, alive. "We did more than okay," she said. "We built something worth protecting." He squeezed her hand. "Still gorgeous, you know?" She slapped him, lightly, playfully.